from Kern Government Television. Welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting. Originating from the County Administrative Center, located at 1115 Truxton Avenue in Bakersfield, California. Grounded in ideas, energy, and innovation, Kern County's vision is to be a driving force for the world's fifth largest economy. And our mission is to exceed expectations of the communities we serve, changing the way they feel about government, those who manage it, and the services it provides. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez. Still here.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022, 2 p.m. meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. First, we're going to hear from County Counsel Margot Raison on reports on actions taken in closed session, but I do have a announcement before I turn to Ms. Raison. Today, in closed session regarding item 50 on this morning's agenda, I'm pleased to report by a 4-0 vote with Supervisor Peters absent, the Board of Supervisors appointed Samuel Lux as the next Director of Public Works, effective August 27th, 2022. Mr. Lux replaces Craig Pope, who retired after 40 years of service to the county. Mr. Lux has a Bachelor of Science degrees in both accounting and civil engineering and is licensed as a civil engineer in the state of California. Mr. Lux has worked with the county as an engineer since 2011, served as the Assistant Director of the Public Works for the last 4 years, and served as Interim Director of Public Works since April 30th of this year. Prior to his career with the county, Mr. Lux worked 8 years in the private industry as a civil engineer. The board is thankful to have somebody with Mr. Lux's unique blend of skills and knowledge leading our Public Works Department, and we look forward to his continued success in serving our county. The board congratulates Mr. Lux on his appointment, and at this time, I'd like to give an opportunity for him to say a few words. Come on up, Sam.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very excited. I've really enjoyed working with Kern County. And since taking over as the interim, I would like to thank the CAO's office, and everyone else has been very supportive of me. It's been very positive, and I really do appreciate that. And I would like to thank my family for putting up with it and all the extra stuff I've been dealing with. And I would really like to thank the staff at Public Works. They have done a really tremendous job in making sure that this has been an easy transition and successful. And I just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations. All right, now I will turn to County Counsel.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. This morning in closed session, you also met on items 51, 52, and 53, and there is no reportable action.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to consider our consent agenda, and agendas are located on the tables near the doors for anyone wishing to follow along. All items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda and will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So now I'll read the consent agenda items. Starting on page 3, we have all items 4 through 8 on consent. Page 4, all items 9 through 15 are on consent. On page 5, we have items 16 through 18, as well as 20 through 24 on consent. So item 19 is off consent. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to exercise chairman's prerogative, and we're going to move item 19 ahead of item number 3 on our agenda today. And on page 6, all items 25 through 31 are on consent. On page 7, all items 32 through 37 are on consent. And finally, on page 8, all items 38 through 42 are on consent. So at this time, I'll ask if there's any members of the audience that would like to make a comment on any of the consent items. Okay, I don't see any. Then I'll return to the board for comments, questions, or a motion.
Motion on consent.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. So next on our agenda will be public presentations. This is back on page 2. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. And so at this time, I'll ask anyone who would like to make a public presentation to please come forward. We ask that you state your name and observe our 2-minute time limit. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Ralph Robles. I am a veteran. In a previous Kern County Supervisors Board meeting, I voiced my concern about the county's ballot drop boxes. Your silence has been deafening. You did refer my concerns to Ms. Mary Bedard, the current voter registrar. In her letter, Ms. Bedard replied, the ballot drop box near the county headquarters, is covered by the building security camera. She made no mention of the security cameras at any other county location Dropbox site. I am aware that at least one other site does not have a camera. After an extensive search of the Kern County website, I found no footage of any of the security cameras. I am hereby requesting that any footage of the security cameras during the election period be displayed on the website. My concern about these mail-in drop boxes was identified by none other than a gentleman named Barack Obama. He said, "I think we have to figure out whether this is a fraud-proof system." As to my concern over the Dominion voting machines, 4 congressional Democrats sent a letter to the owners of Dominion voting systems and cited several problems that threaten the integrity of our elections, including vote switching. In a December 2019 letter to Dominion voting systems, which has been mired in controversy after a human error involving its machines at Anne Arundel County, Michigan, resulted in incorrect counts, Democratic Senators Elizabeth Warren, Ron Wyden, and Amy Klobuchar, and Congressman Mark Pocan warned about reports of machines switching votes, undisclosed vulnerabilities, and improbable results that threaten the integrity of our elections.
Mr. Robles, you've exceeded your time. If you could please bring your comments to a close.
Thank you. I want to bring your attention to an event that happened during a period of food insecurity around the world, because a poor vendor could not do his duty by his customers. In frustration, he lit himself on fire and ignited what was known then as the Arab Spring. I think that this organization needs to be aware that I foresee an impending voter spring. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to board member announcements and reports. Do we have anything from the board? Okay, very well. Then, as I stated, we're going to move item 19 up ahead of 3. This should be a fairly brief item, but it is very good news. This is an item under the County Administrative Office. This is a progress report regarding potential fiber optic infrastructure project by Sci-Fi Networks in unincorporated Metro Bakersfield, Lamont, Fuller Acres, and adjacent communities at no cost to the county. And I'll ask Ryan Alsop, our County Administrative Officer, to start us off.
Yeah, appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Zerfas to give the presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman and members of the board. This item is informational only, and it's just to brief your board on a project that's currently under negotiations between Sci-Fi Networks and Kern County. So in early 22, Sci-Fi approached the city of Bakersfield and Kern County about a joint project that would install a fiber optic network throughout Metro Bakersfield, including some of our outlying areas such as Fuller Acres and Lamont. This is fully funded privately by Sci-Fi to construct and maintain and operate an open access network. So they don't offer directly internet access. They build the network and then they lease network capacity out to internet service providers. It's about a $400 million investment, about half of which falls within the city of Bakersfield and half of which falls in the unincorporated areas of the county. And once built out, it would offer gigabit internet connection for residential, up to 10 gigs for residential, and up to 100 gigabytes for business connectivity. So as I mentioned, Sci-Fi would own the backbone infrastructure, and they would maintain and operate that fiber at their own cost. Residents and businesses have the option to remain with their own internet service providers or seek subscriptions with providers that have leased fiber from Sci-Fi's network. And existing ISPs, they can continue to provide their normal access to the community. This would simply add other options for our community members to have internet connectivity. So in this model, everything gets connected. So this would run a fiber optic network throughout all of the community, connecting every residence, every business, every municipal property, every park. Everything would be able to have access to the network. They operate an open network, so and they wholesale access to various ISPs, and those ISPs then in turn offer residential and business services, and it allows the ISPs to not focus on the hardware aspect, the network side. They focus exclusively on providing competitive internet access. So what this would do is increase competition for high-speed internet access throughout all of Metro Bakersfield, incorporated and unincorporated. It's more than just broadband competition. So yes, you're going to have more broadband options, and that will bring the price down and speeds up because this is all a fiber optic network. But it also offers, it's a kind of a future proofing. So as we look at smart city developments, connected connected infrastructure such as traffic cameras, such as watering technology in parks, a variety of kind of smart city technologies. Once you have a fiber optic network built out throughout the entire community and everything can be connected, it really offers a lot of future proofing as far as being able to leverage those technologies for municipal purposes. Let's see. Sci-Fi brands this as a smart city initiative, and they've been doing this around North America. So you can see the different states they currently operate in, but on the left-hand side of this screen is a list of California communities that they are already doing the same thing in. The 4 with the asterisks are actually under construction. The city and the county actually took a trip down to Fullerton to visit with the city there and see the infrastructure being implemented in place. They utilize a micro-trenching technology, so it's not as invasive as a full-on trench. It runs a very small trench, and we'll get to see a short video of what that looks like, lays the fiber and backfills it and connects it with a network of hubs, little buildings that have the network infrastructure in it to utilize the technology and build out the network. So this is what it looks like. Literally goes down every side of every street. So there's fiber in front of every premises, and then as individuals want connections, a lateral is just run from that line in the street into the home itself or the business itself whenever that they request connectivity. There's no social profiling or network demographics. One of the advantages here is this brings an equity throughout all of our communities, because this network would be installed in all of our disadvantaged communities as well as more affluent communities. So, Oildale or the city of Lamont is going to get the same kind of network infrastructure and connectivity that you would get in maybe Seven Oaks or more affluent area. So there's an equity that this brings to addressing the digital divide throughout all of Metro Bakersfield. So this is what the technology actually looks like and what you'd expect looking at the kind of construction with micro-trenching going through a traditional neighborhood. It can do about 25 feet per day, or 2,500 feet per day, rather, and it's fairly minimally invasive.
I like the music service.
Thank you. So you can see they install right where the curb and gutter kind of meets the asphalt, right where that seam is, and lay the fiber and then do a backfill over it, and they can get in and out of a community pretty quickly.
No speakable content can be found on the screen.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. That's what the end product looked like. So as we were in Fullerton with the city, we looked at a variety of different projects that were already complete. These are 3 examples. They kind of got better as they got more practice. That one on the left we thought looked the best compared to the other 2, and they were kind of working through that process. But that's really what you'd expect. That's an example of a lateral connection too, once those homes are actually connected to the network. So the project area is important. We're looking at the Bakersfield metro area. This is what Sci-Fi had approached the city and the county to invest in. Again, it's about a $400 million investment. In the city, it's the city limits. For the county, we had to define a project area so we knew exactly what they were going to build. And we spent quite a bit of time trying to include all of our neighboring disadvantaged areas into that project area. We've included Oildale, East Bakersfield, Lamont, and Fuller Acres as an example of that, to address the digital divide in those communities. And this is the actual project map. So the yellow is the city of Bakersfield. The pink is unincorporated areas that would be included in the project area. So you can see it pretty much covers all of the greater Metro Bakersfield area plus Fuller Acres and Lamont. So again, in the city, they will build out the network as development occurs because some of those city areas are uninhabited. In the county's portion, they'll build out the network in all of those areas. So every one of those. And then as development continues to occur in unincorporated areas, we would expand that. We'd amend the project area to just add more space, and they could continue building out the network. But we would expect all of those areas to get fiber optic connection. 3 of the ISPs on their network now are Gigabit Now, Ting, and Flume. This is an example. They're offering gigabit Ethernet or gigabit speeds down in, I think this is Fullerton, at $60 per month. So that's pretty competitive when you're looking for gigabit symmetrical. So it's a gigabit down and gigabit up, which is unusual. And $100 for the business class connection in this case. In addition, there are some federal programs that provide low-income subsidies, so they would still be applicable to ISPs on Sci-Fi's network. So, for example, the FCC Affordability Connectivity Program is up to a $30 per month subsidy, so it may cover half of that cost for low-income folks to have that full speed internet. So what's next? This is really just a preview to give you an understanding of what we're working on. We are continuing to work with the city on this joint project. We need joint design specifications, and we are working on that closely with them. We're finalizing the Sci-Fi development agreement. We hope to have that completed in September and back before your board for consideration. And we have to locate 8 of these shelter locations to house equipment. This is a long-term agreement. It's about 30 years plus renewals. It is a non-exclusive right to install in the right-of-way is effectively what it is. So they would be laying this fiber into the county's right-of-way on a non-exclusive basis, meaning if another company wanted to come in and do the same thing, they could do the same thing. But it's at a significant investment, obviously. They'll have an efficient permitting process and a single point of contact with the county to manage the relationship and make sure those permits and inspections are going quickly. And typical provisions such as insurance and indemnification, Sci-Fi would operate and maintain this network indefinitely. If it's ever abandoned, the county would then become the owner of their portion of the network, and the city would be the owner of their portion. So that's really what to expect. It's permitting on a zone-by-zone basis, so it would be cut up into pieces so that it's more manageable. We would expect construction to begin in between March and May of 23, assuming we get the contract in front of your board and approved in September. Once those individual zones are live, they will start connecting folks to the network and offering service, so it doesn't need to be totally built out. The full construction process is going to take 3 to 4 years, but again, we'll have people live on that network much quicker than that as the individual zones are up and running. That concludes my presentation. We do have Sean Parker here from Sci-Fi. He's the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs, and I'd like to introduce Sean to just make a couple comments, and then he and I are available for any questions from the board.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for this opportunity to partner with Sci-Fi. It is a rather unique opportunity, as Jim has laid out. There's a lot of unique components to it, as Jim showed you. One of those key components is open access. That's something that is gravely needed these days across the country and in all of our communities because it creates competition. So often, the story has been so often that we've been locked into monopolies and duopolies, and we have no real control over those sort of pricings and such. But an open access model is exciting because it creates innovation, it drives take rates, and it drives down cost and a lot of innovative packages to go along with it. We also offer a wonderful program called Fiber City Aid, which is a privately subsidized offering to low income and disadvantaged groups. It would represent about 10% of the community, where we would provide a gigabit service for about $30 a month. And then you can also add any sort of state, federal, or other aids to that to bring down those costs even further. So it's an exciting project from a lot of perspectives. Obviously, it's privately funded throughout, so it's a win-win on a lot of those levels. But it's very exciting, and then I'm here to answer any kind of questions you might have about the project.
Board members, do you have any questions before I go to the public? Okay. All right, seeing none, thank you. Please have a seat. We may have a question for you sooner. I'll now ask if there's any later rather. I'll now ask if there's any members of the public that would like to make any comments. Good afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Michael Turnipseed, speaking up for myself today. I'm a resident of the county island on the east side, and I think one of the first things I talked to Mr. Alsop about was how crappy the internet service was and how unreliable it was. And earlier this year, we had 5 major outages. One lasted 3 days because they're too busy to fix it. We need competition. This stuff of having lifetime or 50-year contracts to provide lousy service has to stop. Thank you for coming to Kern County. Thank you for putting this together, you and the city, because it's needed. Too many people don't have internet. They need to get it at better competition, better pricing, and better service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turnipseed. Any other comments, please? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll return to the board the requested action from staff is to receive and file this item.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
I'm ready. Thank you. The vote is all ayes.
Thank you. Very exciting. It's going to be great for all of our residents in the metro area. Okay, now we'll return to item number 3 on the agenda. This is an item that's under our Planning and Natural Resources Department. And we have our Director Lorelei Obiot and her staff getting settled over at the staff desk. And so this item is a request from Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department, Western States Petroleum Association, California Independent Producers Association, proposed amendments to mitigation measures included in the final supplemental recirculated environmental impact report 2020/2021 for Title 19 of the Kern County Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 19.98, Oil and Gas Activities and Related Actions. Ms. Obiot, when you are ready, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chairman Scrivener, members of the board. I'm here today with Cindy Hoover, Division Chief and Staff Lead on the Oil and Gas Environmental Program, along with Craig Murphy, Assistant Director. I'd like to ask County Counsel Margot Raison to introduce our outside counsel.
It's my pleasure. With me, seated next to me today, is Bradley Brownlow with the firm of Holland and Knight, and he has been assisting my office and Ms. Obiot's office in this matter.
Thank you. First, we would like to do some housekeeping. If we could, we would like to show on the internet where we have posted the staff reports and addendums that have been provided to your board today, along with additional materials. So this is the Kern County website, kernplanning.com oil and gas landing page.
Ms. Obiot, if you could give me 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry, we need the translator. Sorry, I apologize.
No, it's my fault. I should have said it before I introduced you. Before we begin, I want to introduce our interpreter, Fernando Lopez, who is available for anyone in the audience requiring translation of the proceedings from English to Spanish. Mr. Lopez, please come down to the podium so we can determine if your services are required this afternoon.
Para las personas que no hablan inglés, solamente español, atrás en la esquina en la mesa hay unos audífonos si quieren participar en la reunión de esta tarde. Gracias.
And in case anyone needs his assistance to address the board during our public comment portion, he's available for that as well. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Okay, Ms. Obiot, please proceed.
Thank you. As I indicated, this is where people who are viewing this online or people who want a copy of the materials can access them. If we can now change over to our PowerPoint. So I'd like to give you an overview of what the matter is before your board today. We have received comments that have been provided to you, and I will be reviewing those. But the matter today is 3 items. 2 amendments to mitigation measures for the previously adopted supplemental recirculated EIR for oil and gas permitting that we adopted in 2021. And then a review of an amended emission reduction agreement that the San Joaquin Valley Air District Board just amended on August 18th for your execution. And then we have brought before your board a resolution to adopt a voluntary drinking water disadvantaged fund that oil and gas would contribute to on their permits. That is what we were doing today. We are not re-adopting the ordinance. We are not recertifying the environmental impact report. Those have not been rescinded. This is in response to Judge Pulscamp's directives on a ruling. I, as the planning director, in consultation with legal counsel, and based on your board's direction that we take all appropriate actions to support responsible oil and gas drilling, have responded to the judge's ruling. It is not a judgment yet, and we have brought this before your board for consideration. We have not been directed by the court to rescind the ordinance, and we have not been directed by the court to undo the EIR. Therefore, the process before your board is appropriate. When mitigation measures, and your board personally, this board has approved dozens and dozens of environmental impact reports for solars principally, when we adopt those mitigation measures, they cannot be arbitrarily changed by staff. We cannot change them. They are adopted, they are enforceable, and when they want to be, when someone requests that they be changed, or when we believe that they need to be changed, we have to go through another public hearing. We analyze whether the changes to those mitigation measures brings up more environmental issues, or if those mitigation measures are making the environmental impacts that they were mitigating less, meaning we're going to be less restrictive, then there are appropriate actions we need to take under CEQA. In this case, we are making this mitigation measure for agricultural resource conservation more restrictive. Therefore, we've brought this before you with an addendum. You are familiar with addendums. We have used them on solar and wind and other projects. The addendum has been included in your staff report. So the main mitigation measure that we're looking at is mitigation measure 4.2-1 for agricultural resources. Next slide. We are also going to look at 4.17-5, but that is the drinking water, and it is not being proposed for changes the way 4.2 is. So I'm going to spend some time walking through the proposed changes to this mitigation measure. In addition, you've received an addendum with many comments, and some of those comments actually brought up appropriate ideas and changes that I am now recommending be made to the language that was originally provided to you. So, to keep track of all of this, if you take your addendum, inside your addendum, there is a page, starting on page 18, that has the strikeout and replace of this mitigation measure, and I have bolded some of the changes, and we're going to now walk through what is the original mitigation measure, how are we recommending the changes, and what additional changes have we brought to you based on public comments. These are comments from people who represent farmers, and we believe that since this mitigation measure affects their concerns, that these are appropriate recommendations. Next slide. So as a reminder, for those of you who were here on the board in 2015 when we adopted this, and those who weren't, the issue of legacy equipment on agricultural productive land was an ongoing controversial issue when we started this project. So over the last 7 years, it has continued to be an evolving issue. So what is the issue? So there are agricultural farmers who have made agreements with oil industry to come and drill on their property. And they've been compensated for the loss of their farmland, but in some cases, companies have gone bankrupt and they've left oil field equipment that can range from everything from a pile of pipe to a concrete foundation where they took the tank down, but the foundation's still there. And the surface owner is left with this leftovers, and we call that legacy equipment. And the agricultural industry believes that there should be some way of incentivizing people to take that off. We came up with a number of mitigation measures, not to address that, but to address the loss of ag land. The mitigation measure that required buying agricultural easements was invalidated by the appeals court. We took it out, and we came up with the concept in the supplemental recirculated EIR that you certified, that if you owned equipment on the same place that you were drilling, you could get credit for agricultural mitigation by taking it off. We now have direction from the court that that's not sufficient. So what we're proposing to do now is require a ratio. And I'm going to use simple numbers just so it's easier to keep track of. if you impact 1 acre of agricultural land, you have to make up for that by taking legacy equipment and an area of use for oil off of other farmland. And we have definitions for that. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, per acre or square feet. So who does this affect? In reality, over the last 7 years, we've only affected, 12 acres a year of farmland. We are not talking about hundreds and hundreds of acres, but we are talking about an impact that we need to address. So the first question is, what does it apply to? There is a definition for farmland, which has not been found invalid, and that is, it has 3 portions. The first portion is it's designated prime farmland of state or statewide importance or unique farmland on the Department of Conservation maps. The second category is that it's been farmed 5 out of 10 years. Now, this is a definition that we have used for the last 15 years on solar projects as well. So this is a clear definition. And the third definition is that they have adequate water supply sufficient to farm. And if you have those 3 things, you have farmland. And when an oil and gas conformity review comes in to drill a new well, it triggers this mitigation. So that's the first definition. The second criteria of applicability is we already have in the mitigation measure a limitation on how much you can disturb. And that was adopted by your board. Next slide. That was adopted by your board with the SREIR, and we've been implementing this. So there's 3 sub-areas. So in the west sub-area, cannot disturb more than 2 acres. You can't come in and say on your oil and gas drilling, well, I need 2.3. There is no flexibility. And the only way that you could change that is to process a conditional use permit with environmental review. So on the west, it's 2 acres. In the central, it's 3 acres. On the east, it's 1.2 acres. We use these disturbance factors in the SREIR, in the EIR, to analyze how much disturbance there would be, and they are clear limitations. So next, how do we implement this? Next slide. So once again, this is about legacy equipment removal. However, in the comments that we received, they brought up good comments, and so we are proposing in the addendum to modify this language to talk about area of use. So when an oil company negotiates a lease for the use of the land, there's a complete area that they are essentially precluding the farmer from using. So it's not just the small pad, it's the other acre that the farmer can't plant because it's part of the oil company's area of use and it has to be kept free and clear. And they therefore can park there, they can put pipe there, can store things, but it is essentially removing from the agricultural use the area of use. So we've modified the language to be clear that we are talking about releasing for your credit not just removing legacy equipment, but also the area of use, which gets you more land for your credit, but it also gives back to the farmer or the surface owner more of their land. Now, when we do this plot plan, and we have specifics in here that you have to put together this plan, you have to show us pictures, we're also going to exclude things that could not be farmed. The road, a dirt road could never have been farmed in the first place, so we're not going to give you credit for it either. So you're going to draw a map, and you're going to take out the farmed existing roads, recorded utility easements, we're going to clarify that in the mitigation, tanks and wells that already exist. Now, that's not just tanks and wells for the oil company. There could be a water tank there, right? And it could be on your oil lease. You're not going to take it down. It's going to stay. So that is excluded from the credit. This is what we do for agricultural easements as well. So this is not a new concept for people. There is a map, it shows the details, and that's how we calculate that you have come up with enough land. We have a definition of legacy equipment, which is useful from the perspective of, it's not that it's just oil and gas equipment, it's not intended to be used and operated. It's been abandoned, it's empty, it's old, they haven't used it for something. Next slide. So the next addition to this concept, however, is the current mitigation says you're going to do it if you have some on your own land. We now have extended that. If you don't have enough on land that you control, you have to go find some. You have to either go find other farmland that has legacy equipment, locate the owners. Many of the companies have inventories of that. They already know that they have plenty of other that they can do. But later in this mitigation, we're going to talk about a credit bank to allow people to, perhaps you're a small operator and you don't have any of that kind, you could actually go buy mitigated legacy equipment removal credits. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But as a reminder, if it's on your property, you're required to take it off. You're the operator, you control it on that assessor parcel, you drill a well, there's an old concrete foundation, whether it's yours or not, you control that lease. You have to start there. Now, you don't have to restore the land. You don't have to remediate it to some level that it can be planted. You do have to change it to grade. And everything has to be disposed of legally. You're going to tell us where you're going to cart it off to. You're going to tell us how you're going to dispose of it. So now you're going to go out and you're going to find these other lands, and all of it has to equal your one-to-one. So part of the issue, of course, is enforceability. So we are requiring in this mitigation, first of all, that you have to do it within 60 days. You have to turn in this plan when you come to get a permit, but once you move in and start operating and you disturb the land, if you stop working and you pull off or you finish, you only have 60 days to finish the removal and give us your package. So we're going to require a financial assurance. You can put up a bond, you can put up a letter of credit, or you can put up a cash deposit for the full amount that we will put in a trust fund and hold. What is the idea behind that? The idea is enforceability. All mitigation measures have to be enforceable, and we have to be able to account for what happens if someone doesn't complete the work. So we've written into the mitigation a 20% contingency for this financial assurance and 15% administrative costs for the county if the county has to exercise this financial assurance. So you have 60 days. Now, you have up to 6 months to finish the work. You're supposed to finish it in 60 days. But if you don't do it in 6 months, then we're going to send a written letter and we're going to say, we're going to have a hearing. And we've written that in. We're going to have a hearing, and you get to come to this hearing and you get to tell us your facts. And it's in front of the planning department. It's a director's hearing. It's appealable to the Board of Supervisors if you don't like the answer. But it's a hearing on the facts. It's not a hearing on whether you liked the mitigation. It's not a hearing for the farmer to say he didn't like you taking it off. It's just a hearing on the facts. So what facts could come up to that hearing? Someone could come in and say, you have the wrong piece. You actually sent the inspector out, which will be a staff planner, and they looked at the wrong piece. This is the piece of property, and this is our mistake. We gave you the wrong APN. It's a fact-based. And then they also have an opportunity to say, we've already done it. There's no penalties assessed for failing to do it, except that we would exercise our rights to use your financial assurance, hire a contractor under the county rules, and go out and do the work ourselves. And we would fully expect that through communication and the kinds of conversations that your board encourages departments to have, that would not come to that. and that we would be able to work out, why have you failed to do this? Remember, we're only talking about 12, at the most 14 acres a year. This is not a large number of permits. Next. So this is the enforcement. We're going to ask for before and after photos. We're going to require that they allow us on site for an inspection to come and see. We're only going to be inspecting that work. It's not wide open spaces where you can look at everything. And we've written those details into the mitigation measure. We are going to require that we get written permission from the owners, surface owners, for all of those things before the operator uses that property. So we're going to respect everyone's rights. If you don't want to participate in this program and have legacy equipment removed, then you just don't have to participate in it. The operator, however, to get an oil and gas permit, must do that. So, how do you get your financial assurance back? How do you not have us spend that money? Well, that's easy. Let's say you never drill the well. Fine, you can cancel the permit. You never moved in, you never touched the surface. Cancel it, we'll refund it all, and we'll release it with the bank. You went to CalGEM and you got a permit, but you decided not to drill. Well, we're going to make you withdraw that CalGEM permit, then you can cancel it. So any time before it's issued, you can withdraw your permit. So we will release it instantly. There's no rule that we're going to hold it, and we will work with people to make sure. The financial assurances will all be to the standards that County Council requires. As a reminder, we do these kinds of assurances all the time on solar projects for decommissioning bonds. And we do them on mining. So the planning department is very conversant with the process. We're very familiar with the process with County Council to make sure that instruments have the rules that we need. One of the biggest rules is that the financial institution has to give us 120 days before they cancel it so that we can get another one in place. And we do believe that many people will probably put up cash deposits, which we can hold in a dedicated trust fund rather than them having to do bonds. Once a work completion package is submitted, there's an area, we'll just use 1 acre again, that's now been deemed mitigation. We will flag that in our Acela online permitting system, and we will make sure that if someone wants to drill on that 1 acre again, they have to do the mitigation again. They can drill on it, but they have to go out and find another 1 acre to replace it. So we have a system in place of enforcement, a system in place in the mitigation. Now, one of the comments that we got, which we believe deserves your consideration, is to create a mitigation credit. So we had already written into the mitigation that, let's say you need 1 acre, but you do 1.5 acres. We had already written in that you could hold that ½ acre as a credit for another project. And you could even provide that to sell to someone else. The comments that we got actually created better language to create that mitigation credit process. And so they are actually proposing that mitigation credits can be bought and sold. We do require that if you do enhanced legacy equipment removal, you're going to have to give us before and after pictures, and you're going to have to give us all the evidence that you followed all the other mitigation measures, dust control, taking care of your biology. So you can't just go out and take it out and get credit for it if it doesn't fit within this program. So there's an opportunity there. You can also voluntarily remove an idle well. So we have provided in the addendum the idle well CalGEM program. This is voluntary, not mandatory. So the legislature changed the rules, and if you have an idle well, you must abandon it at the end of 8 years, once it goes on the list. So the way that the idle wells were managed before, it was a longer period of time. And now there's an 8-year deadline, and there's no extensions. So companies have now this list of idle wells. Remember, an idle well is an asset. It could be put back into production or maybe not. And so they have made a corporate decision to classify it as an idle well that eventually will be abandoned. And so we are saying that if you voluntarily abandon it ahead of your 8-year deadline, we will give you credit for it. This is an issue that your board in 2015 was consistently brought up in comments that farmers wanted idle wells taken out. I believe that this is a new compromise that actually would incentivize oil companies, because if they abandon it in the 8th year, that's one thing. If they abandon it now, they get credit for it. So based on the recommendations, some of the comments that are in the addendum, some of the suggestions we are not going to recommend to your board. You can consider them, but some of them we believe go beyond the authority. One of them is that the legacy equipment should be removed before we issue a permit. We believe that this violates the fundamental rules that there has to be an impact before you can condition something. So to hold up a permit and make them do it ahead of time, mandatory ahead of time, we don't believe is constitutionally allowed. Certainly they can do it ahead of time, and many oil companies are indicating they will, but once again, they have to show us the work so that we can validate it. So the language of this revised recommended changes, which have come from the representative of Shute Mahali, which is a law firm that is a litigant against the oil and gas EIR. These are some of their suggestions. These suggestions do fit with the conversations that I've had with oil companies and farmers, so I am recommending that we amend the original mitigation that I brought to you for amendment with strikeout and amend it to these recommendations. They are listed in your addendum. There is also a typo that I want to read into the record. Under 8, it says, before such action can be taken, a hearing shall be conducted at a director's hearing as provided for in section 19.102.070. It's supposed to say through 19.102.120 of the Kern County zoning ordinance. And it also says that in the last, as detailed in section 19.102.70 through 19.102.120, any decision can be appealed to the Board of Supervisors for final determination. So those are the changes that we believe are reflective of the board's direction. Sorry, I apologize, of the court's direction, and I'm bringing them before your board for consideration. The SREIR that your board certified said that legacy equipment removal was infeasible. The evidence that was provided to the judge provided that infeasibility, but the judge's ruling indicated that he believed there was ag mitigation that still needed to be imposed. The difference between when we brought it to you for the infeasibility and this is that at that time, the planning department's permitting system, we didn't believe that we had the capacity to actually manage this kinds of programs because we were concerned that we would have so many hundreds of acres and the staffing. And so we, as a policy decision, we asked your board not to impose it. We do believe that now that we have gone through these ag mitigation systems now over the last 7 years, that we have a system. And we believe that with the online system that we have now, we can accommodate this and we can manage this responsibly. It is a stricter requirement than what we have in the current mitigation. Next slide. So I'm sure you have questions, and certainly I can answer questions. I would ask that perhaps you can ask them after testimony, and I'll go through, next slide. I'll go through the other 2 items that we have. So the second mitigation measure was 4.17-5, utilities and service systems, which was a mandatory contribution to a disadvantaged drinking water fund. The court indicated that this issue of impacts on disadvantaged communities was not a CEQA issue. So we're proposing that this be deleted as a mandatory action, and instead we've brought you a resolution to impose it as a voluntary contribution by the oil and gas permits. So we're using the idea of the check the box that you've seen on tax returns or other sorts of things, where on the Acela online permitting, there'd be a check the box if they wish to donate to this program. So far, this program has produced, for the short amount of time that we were able to collect it, $189,000 that public health is using for a variety of drinking water programs with disadvantaged communities in the valley. So the way that the mitigation measure is worded, we collect the money, put it in a trust. Public health goes through their normal process. Those contracts are brought to your board. Those programs are brought to your board. They do bottled water. They use it as matching funds to fix water wells, and it can only be used in the valley. So we are proposing, and the industry is supportive of us trying this experiment of a pilot program on oil and gas permits for this collection. The last issue is the amended emission reduction agreement. This is the agreement that we have with between your board from 2016 and the Air District that provides for us to collect per ton fees for oil permits, which are then sent to the Air District, and they give them out as grants to clean up sources. To date, we have sent $126 million. Every year, the Air District provides a report of what they have done with that money. We did go to the Air District on August 18th, and at their board, they did unanimously approve an amended agreement. And in the agreement, we clarify that these funds will also, they have been used up until now, and there is a letter in your record of this, to mitigate both PM10 and PM2.5, but we are clarifying that agreement that it will manage 2.5 as well. The addendum that you have received includes a list of all of the people who have commented. Significant comments were received from Shute, Mahaly, and Weinberger on behalf of Five Lions Farming, the Center for Biological Diversity, the Center on Race, Poverty, Environment, Comité Progresso de Lamont, Committee for a Better Arvin, Committee for a Better Shafter, Earth Justice, National Resources Defense Council, the Sierra Club, and 75 letters, which were all essentially the same email message, which was you should vote no, and you should transition out of fossil fuels. The comments from the names I read were much more extensive. We have provided in this addendum detailed answers and responses to all of their comments. We have also provided for your board an additional addendum which highlights our responses to air quality, concerns that were raised, water supply, comments that the findings and statement of overriding considerations we have brought before your board are not legally sufficient, and that there is new information that has been provided on biology and other issues. We have provided you a legal response for the record, which clearly states that all of these things are outside the action before your board. All that is before your board is these two mitigation measures, the emission reduction agreement, and this voluntary drinking water. We are also noting that the complaint that has been provided in some of these comments is that we did not give the public enough time to comment on this. The impression that they only had 3 days because the staff report is reduced on a Thursday is inaccurate. The public notice was released on July 18th. People began to receive that notice on July 20th. There is a contact information on there for questions, and that notice showed that we were having a briefing workshop on August 1st. On August 1st, we had a briefing workshop in person. The PowerPoint is in your addendum. You can see the same information, in fact, with more detail than I presented this afternoon, was presented at August 1st, leaving almost 3.5 weeks for people to call and give us comments. And we have provided you all those comments. We've received 75 emails. And then yesterday and today, we received these large packages of comments. We have authentically looked at every recommendation, and I have, with my staff and legal counsel, evaluated those that we believe are recommendations for your board. So I believe that completes my presentation. I'm available for questions, and I would defer if Ms. Razan has any other comments that she wanted to add for the record.
Mr. Chairman, we have nothing at this time and would recommend moving on to public comment.
Thank you. Before I move to public comment, I see Supervisor Perez and Supervisor Peters have punched in. Would you like to make comments now? Supervisor Perez, you go first.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Chairman. Lorelei, I see in the farmland issue, first of all, I missed number 3 because I was writing something else, so I need 3 again. But you said designated prime, farmed 5 of the last 10 years. What was the third thing you said?
Have a water allocation sufficient for farming from any source.
And the interplay with Sigma on that issue?
We believe there will be less designated farmland in the future.
So, okay, and lastly, the prime issue. You said under farmland, it's got to be designated prime, or that for the purposes of the ordinance, the farmland is necessarily prime?
So the Department of Conservation has maps that make these designations, but they are not updated. So that is why we have a 3 criteria evaluation. You go to the maps first. It may say it's prime farmland, and then you find out, has it been farmed 5 out of 10 years? And if no, it's not farmland.
Got it. So that's an actual farmland definite designation.
That's right.
Got it.
That's the only designation there is. And as you know,
Got it.
farmland may go fallow, but if you don't have sufficient water. So we do believe that it might be farmland in the next 2 years, but it lost water this year. So by 2026 or 27, it may fall out of actually being designated farmland.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Supervisor Peters, did you want to wait on yours?
Yeah, I'll hold up. You know, actually, just real quick, along the lines of Sigma, I know that you had mentioned a fund for drinking water, and it might entail well mitigations. Would that be something that could be used as, you know, matching funds for some of the state grants that are coming out for well mitigation projects?
That's exactly the intention. You know, when self-help and these other community groups get these grants, they need matching funds. And so that public health could then use this funding.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other requests from the board, I'll then go to the public. And so we ask that you come forward if you'd like to make a comment on this item. Please state your name, and we have a 2-minute time limit per speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Suzanne Noble. I'm with the Western States Petroleum Association. I'm the Senior Director of Production Operations. WSPA is a nonprofit trade association representing companies throughout California and the other 4 Western states. Along with WSPA, SIPA was the original applicants for the zoning ordinance and accompanying EIR that the board adopted in November of 2015. Together, the applicant associations represent the largest majority of oil and gas companies within our state. The oil and gas ordinance and the 2015 EIR created a comprehensive streamlining permitting system for the oil and gas activities here in Kern County. imposing new standards and conditions for oil and gas operations, development, and production. The EIR introduced many new restrictions, costs, requirements, and mitigation measures which significantly affected industry operations. Nevertheless, WISPA strongly supported them, and we continue to support them. These measures provide certainty and efficiency for the county's streamlined permitting process, and in our view, the oil and gas permitting program has been highly successful, helping to further responsible oil and gas development, while at the same time safeguarding the county's environmental resources. Before you today is the final SREIR with a few amendments as requested by the court that we are fully supportive of. We want to thank the staff for their tremendous hard work to prepare this final SREIR. And I just want to note that in California, the energy industry leads in innovation and environmental stewardship. We comply with some of the most stringent, strict environmental regulations in the world, and we do strive to operate in harmony with our neighbors and our community. We respectfully ask the board to approve the final SEIR. We do appreciate the county's support. We look forward to continued success with the economy and the environmental benefits to our county. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
So we can all go over time? That was over time. 18 seconds.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Scrivener, Supervisors, Director Oviatt. My name is Trent Rosenleib, and I am here presenting for the California Independent Petroleum Association, or SIPA, as it is known. SIPA is a nonprofit, nonpartisan trade association representing over 300 independent crude oil, natural gas producers, royalty owners, and service supply companies operating in California. SIPA members represent approximately 70% of the crude oil production in the state and 90% of the natural gas production. Many SIPA members have operations based in Kern County and are directly impacted by the Kern SREIR. The amended mitigation measures presented in the staff report, along with the proposed resolution, will assist in furthering opportunities for resumption of permitting oil and gas activities in Kern County. Amendments to the mitigation measures will strengthen protections for the agricultural community and bring clarity to the air emissions concerns. The recommended resolution will serve to bolster improved water quality in communities through funding projects with a focus in Kern County. The proposed fees will be collected will stay in Kern County and will be administered by Kern County agencies. SIPA recommends the board adopt the amended mitigation measures as described in the staff report and adopt by resolution a new program that will support drinking water for disadvantaged communities. These mitigation measures in the resolution will aid in moving the county closer to issuing permits, allowing the vital oil and gas industry to move forward in Kern County, providing Californians with the energy they demand rather than having to import crude oil from foreign countries that do not have the environmental protections that we have in Kern County and California. Thank you very much for your consideration and time this afternoon.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Russell Johnson on behalf of the Associated Builders and Contractors. Hello, members of the board, Chairman Scrivener. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. First, on behalf of ABC and the thousands of workers we train at our Workforce Development Training Center right here in Kern County, we've trained thousands of oil and gas workers. We're the ones that build the infrastructure, drill the wells, and make sure that enhanced oil recovery can happen in California. With that, I'd like to say I want to thank the Planning Department for holding a public session on August 1st. It was well publicized in the paper. It allowed us to understand exactly what the changes are to the proposed ordinance, and we think that on behalf of our members and the workers that they employ in Kern County, it's a step forward to ensuring that we have permits so that we can ensure we put folks back to work in Kern County. So thank you, and we urge approval. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener, members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to comment today. My name is Clint Olivier. I'm the CEO of the Central Valley Business Federation, or BizFed. We're a grassroots alliance of over 75 businesses and organizations representing 30,000 diverse employers and over 400,000 employees in the Central Valley from Kern up to Madera. At BizFed, we believe that a thriving economy will help solve many of our area's challenges. Today, we express our support and respectfully ask you to approve Kern's oil and gas permitting structure to keep the families of Kern County working. We must take advantage of the rich resources we have right beneath our feet to provide good-paying job opportunities for those right here in our own communities. The proposed permitting structure creates critical environmental protections that support safe oil and gas operations. And as we all know, here in Kern County and here in California, we are the gold standard for energy production and very proud of that. We just do it better here. With the energy industry under constant attack at the state and national levels, we must do all we can locally to protect our families and our communities. I urge you today to support the item, to support Kern families, to support our school districts, roads, and public safety. I urge you to vote for this item and stand up for local families. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Sandra Placencia, Leadership Council. Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability works alongside community members most impacted by pollution, and the emissions from the oil and gas industry are a top of concern for our community members. Residents in Fuller Acres and Lamont are burdened by contaminated water and air quality implications that sprout from the oil refineries nearby. Adopting weak mitigation measures that does not achieve CEQA requirements will only exacerbate community concerns. Given that the county intends to authorize tens of thousands of new oil and gas wells, the county must do its due diligence to implement a transparent public process. Releasing details on its latest proposal 3 days before the supervisor's vote is unacceptable. The county must stop making efforts to expand oil and gas drilling and focus on transitioning workers to jobs outside of the fossil fuel industry to protect frontline communities facing the extreme impacts of pollution from this industry. The county must also begin to diversify its economic base and end its continued reliance on the volatile fossil fuel industry for a large chunk of its tax base. We urge you to vote no on the proposed amendments to mitigation efforts offered to address deficiencies in the county's environmental review for its 2021 oil and gas ordinance. We urge the county to not take further action without providing opportunity for public input and discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Rachel Glauser, and I'm here on behalf of Kern Citizens for Energy and our more than 11,000 members in Kern County. KCE was founded to support local energy production and all the men and women working in this industry. We represent thousands of Kern County citizens, as well as 5 incorporated cities, 10 chambers of commerce, hundreds of small businesses, and a cross-section of representatives from our healthcare, education, nonprofit, and public safety organizations in Kern. KCE supports the supplemental recirculated environmental impact report for the Kern County Oil and Gas Ordinance, because the reality is that all Californians depend on Kern County's oil and gas industry to provide the basic necessities that every single one of us in this room continues to use every single day. Given our enormous and continued consumption of petroleum products, it remains our view that these products ought to be produced right here by Kern County citizens. The oil and gas industry in Kern County is responsible for thousands of jobs and millions in revenue. Our community is healthier, happier, and safer when we have access to abundant, affordable, local energy. Support for this exhaustive environmental review and re-implementation of our gold standard permitting program ensures that we continue producing these natural resources under the strictest environmental health and safety standards in the world. The majority of Kern County citizens support our incredible energy industry, and we say thank you to Ms. Oviatt and the county staff for their expertise and professionalism, ensuring that we continue to feed and power all of California and beyond. Thank you.
Hello, Chair Scrivener, Board of Supervisors. I'm Sherry Hornbunk, Dr. Sherry Hornbunk now. I work at Taft College. I run the foundation, and I am also a professor in the business school at Cal State Bakersfield. So my story maybe is a little bit different. I went out to Taft College about 13 years ago to start their foundation, to help Taft College, which is about 40 miles west of here, with a very underserved population of students. I didn't know where to start, but a couple people told me, hey, we've got some oil companies that might be willing to talk to you. 13 years later, I have oil companies that have supported our students. And I will tell you, they're very humble in their giving. You would think that their philanthropy would be something about, I give for this, let's make a big hoopla. No, not really. You wouldn't think that an oil company would support a new anatomy physiology lab to support nurses in our community that we need so much. They did. You wouldn't think that an oil company would help us update our audio visual in all of our new classrooms for students coming back after COVID, but they did. And you might not think that an oil company would help our world-renowned transition to independent living program for young men and women with people with intellectual disabilities and autism that live with us. There's nothing like it in the world, nothing else. You wouldn't think that an oil company would help us support that and then hire them as an intern, a student with a disability, but they did. So, that's kind of my context to all of this. Many of the students that go to Taft College are first-generation students. Their parents work in the agricultural as well as oil industries. It's the West Side. A lot of the students come in from the West Side. It's I hate to say melting pot because people don't like that word anymore, but it is a melting pot, little college, and it's a great place to go. Now on a personal note, I did a little bit of research. I was kind of shocked. Petroleum only provides 1% of the electricity. We only use 1% of petroleum to provide electricity. However, 67% of petroleum is used for transportation services. And you know what transportation means to all of this. There's no way. We produce 1 million electric cars a year.
Sherry.
Okay.
Over time. But you
Please.
can go over time and have
You're-
undivided attention.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to go now. Thank you so much for.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman, members of the board. Romeo Agbalog, Kern County Farm Bureau. I want to take a moment just to say thank you, and that the Farm Bureau recognizes, respects, and appreciates the hard work of your staff and all the partners who came together to establish this landmark oil and gas permitting process that's been recognized. That process has allowed farmers and ranchers the opportunity to collaborate, work together with their neighboring oil and gas industry partners to address concerns and bring forward solutions of mutual benefit. And in particular today with these amendments, we want to recognize the work of your staff in putting together some of these amendments as they speak to legacy equipment. Farm Bureau supports these amendments and would encourage your board to move forward and adopt them. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Hello, Supervisor Scrivener, Chairman Scrivener, and the rest of the supervisors. My name is Dave Noerr, spelled N-O-E-R-R. I'm a contractor by trade, as well as an elected representative over in the city of Taft, a small community surrounded by some 10,000 oil wells. There's a great deal of discussion these days about the need for a just transition, just transformation in regard to powering the world as we move forward. The fact of the matter is, in the United States of America right now, for the past 15 years, our carbon footprint, our emissions footprint, has been on a steady decline. As a matter of fact, right now, it's equivalent to what it was in 1987. The big difference being in 1987, the population of the United States of America was some 239 million people. Today, it's 338 million people. An increase of some 40%, 100 million more people. Given quality of life, safety, like we do here in this country, and we're fortunate enough to And yet, we've been able to drop our emissions back down to 1987 levels. To say that nothing is being done, no progress is being made, is quite ludicrous. Also right now, center stage across the globe is energy security, and the result of not enjoying energy security is energy-induced poverty. There are many people going to suffer this throughout the globe. The same globe that is scheduled to burn through some 8 billion tons of coal through the course of the rest of this year. Energy security and keeping energy poverty out of our community is front and center. It's a critical component of what you all do. 39 million people in the state of California, 14 million people live near or below the poverty level. They are hanging on by their fingernails to be able to provide basic quality of life in spite of how hard they work. You are that safety net between the policies coming out of Sacramento and their ability to continue to provide for their families. I encourage you to stay the course. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask everyone to please refrain from applause. It's a little disruptive, and even though I know you're passionate about this, and also creates a much more even environment when we don't applaud or boo or anything like that. So I appreciate you adhering to those protocols. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my
Next
name
speaker.
is...
Ma'am, you are getting close to the line of being disruptive. You're getting close to the line of being disruptive in this meeting. If you continue to be disruptive, I'll have to have you removed. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Maria Elvira Williams, Membership Director for the League of United Latin American Citizens, Council 3272. LULAC is the oldest Latino civil rights organization in the United States. Our council is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to establish collaborative partnerships that improve the economic conditions, educational achievement, health, and civic engagements of communities in Kern County. We are the largest LULAC council in California with over 100 members. The oil and gas industry in Kern County is responsible for 25,000 jobs. That's 1 in every 7 jobs here in our county, and millions of dollars in economic activity that support our families, businesses, roads, and public safety functions, among many other local benefits. It is very important that our oil industry has the permitting structure in place so that we can keep producing all of the oil needed by nearly 40 million Californians. The oil and gas industry contributes $197 million in annual Kern County property tax. These revenues support our local schools, roads, and public safety. An example of how gas and oil supports our community is with California Resource Corporation, CRC, announced it has pledged $2.5 million to fund several Kern County initiatives with Kern Community College District and the California State University, Bakersfield, to help advance energy education and further benefit communities across the region. These are our children, our grandchildren, getting the opportunity to get ahead and prosper in California. I'm going to skip over and say thank you. And LULAC Council 322 would like to offer our support of Kern County's Board of Supervisors and our local oil and gas industry. As you've already heard today, the Board of Supervisors and local producers have been proactive and innovative, but they need the cooperation of the administration and legislation to sustain local production. Our council would not be able to continue sponsoring community events such as our citizenship workshops, student mentoring and workshops.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, Board, thank you very much. My name is Eitan Golubchik. I've been involved in financing and drilling on about 9 acres of the 60 acres referenced earlier over the past 5 years on farmland. We actually look forward to continuing drilling activities on farmland as soon as this is resolved, and we really thank you for all of your efforts in making this happen. I'd like to respectfully request that the Planning Board reconsider the 1-to-1 mitigation ratio it is considering here. When we'd like to drill a well, it usually takes about 2 acres to move in a drilling rig, do all the activities required to drill a well. Within a year, at most 2, the overwhelming majority of that is returned back to farmland, which is why most well pads take 1/10 of an acre, maybe 1/5. Most tank farms take a third of an acre, 1/4 of an acre. So to require mitigation of 6 to 8 tank farms or 10 to 20 well pads would significantly increase the cost and administrative burden required for a small company to try and drill on existing farmland. We believe that credit should be given for returning farmland on that 2 acres after it is used, returning that farmland to be considered as part of the 1-to-1 mitigation. Otherwise, we do think that the 1-to-1 mitigation ratio suggested would probably restrict and severely limit drilling on farmland in and around Kern County, and would also severely limit a lot of the mitigation that we'd like to do in terms of removal of equipment moving forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Sir, would you spell your name for us?
Etan, E-T-A-N, last name Golubchik, G-O-L-U-B-T-C-H-I-K.
I don't know why I didn't get that. Supervisor Perez.
Etan, but both your names are complicated, so I feel some connection with you. I understand. So I'm curious. I wanted to have a lengthier discussion about the ratio issue in just a moment, because it's obviously problematic in real life as things practically play out. But I do believe there is a necessary mitigation spirit here, if you will, and I find what you have said to be so intriguing about the return to production, because that seems like a cultural effort that all of us should be driving and sort of incorporating into any policy persuasion that we can. But it seems like quite an imposition to condition the return of land as to the future. I mean, that seems really problematic. Can you just tell me a little more about your thoughts on that?
We believe, and I think we have acted accordingly over the past few years that we've been in the county in working closely with the farmers. I think every farmer that we've worked with has been not only positive, but appreciative of all the work we've done to help keep their farmland productive and also return whatever farmland we can for them to use again. I believe that many of them understand that when we come in, we remove crops or grapevines or whatever to be able to do our drilling activity, but very often are able to return a lot of it either when the well is not productive, or once we get a pump jack out there on a tank farm that takes 1/3 of an acre at most, the rest of it goes back to the farming. And that's why you'll see when you're driving around Kern County, you'll see little tank farms here and there in the middle of these big farms. But when you have to calculate the amount of time and effort it would take to contact owners, of all these different tank farms all over the place, and again, you're talking about 6 to 8 tank farms to drill a single well, the administrative burden and the cost associated with that would probably limit, if not stop, drilling on existing farmland.
What else do you hear in that, in the conversations with farmers, that is natural to the direction they are already moving within the grain of the universe of progress, real progress? What do you hear anything else? Because this is just very intriguing as to how we partner better, right, in the long-term goal of having more productivity, more efficiency in every regard. So this is very interesting. What else do you hear that we are not doing in the process that could creatively be built in, would move costs, but still move us in the same spirit of mitigation?
Honestly, when we move in, they just appreciate that we don't spill on their stuff. It's really not that hard. As long as you're working well with everybody, I think we've always had positive relationships. Many of these farmers, if not themselves, their family members own minerals. They're very happy to get royalty checks as well. It's not true all over the place. As we know, there's definitely separated minerals a lot. But I think many of them are just appreciative to have, other industry working nearby and partner, and we can we try to share fencing and other costs to mitigate both their risks and ours, and we work closely providing security for their farms and for our materials. It's always good to have more people working together than against each other.
Absolutely. And each parcel is just so unique and just, it's complicated.
It's so complicated, which is why trying to find the person to approve every one of those tank farms or well pads will get very expensive and complicated.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Supervisor. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener, members of the board. Nick Ortiz, representing the Greater Bakersfield Chamber, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. Your board's approval of the updated mitigation measures proposed today would prove once again that in our county, environmental protection and economic development are not mutually exclusive. This, along with the body of your board's policy and land use decisions around traditional and renewable energy, further solidifies Kern County as California's energy capital. As Mayor Knorr alluded to, your board is providing not only for your constituents in Kern County, but making decisions that ultimately benefit all Californians, whether they or their elected leaders appreciate them or not. As others have noted, oil and gas is a vibrant industry supporting our community and ingrained in our local culture. I'd like to commend the industry for sticking with this process and taking on additional mitigations. I'd like to thank your board for your continued leadership in protecting our economy. And on behalf of the Chamber and our 1,100 members, I encourage you to adopt the updated measures and amend the EIR. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who'll be next, please?
Hi there, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Alsop, and staff. My name is Amanda Frank, and I work at the Kern County Superintendent of Schools office. In addition, I have the honor of serving on a local school board. Thank you for the opportunity to represent the 46 school districts in Kern County, serving the over 190,000 PK through 12th grade students. We know that Kern County is currently facing a myriad of challenges, not the least of which is that over 30% of the children that live in Kern County live in poverty. Any loss in the single largest economic driver in our county will disproportionately impact our youth. The petroleum industry provides funding and support to numerous school districts and programs that educate our children and provide them with the tools for lifelong success. Revenues from the oil and gas industry in Kern County help to keep our schools operating and funded, which help us meet the diverse needs of students in our community. The direct financial impact on Kern County school infrastructure must be discussed. Almost 59% of local property taxes go to school districts, so the petroleum industry is a key partner in supporting education in Kern County. During the 2018-2019 fiscal year, the oil and gas industry contributed more than $197 million in property tax revenue in Kern County. Of that, $103 million in property tax revenue was directed to Kern County schools. Education and employment are the great equalizers, providing families with the keys to be successful in life. Particularly in these challenging times, it is critical that our schools have the resources to meet the diverse needs of our students. In addition to jobs and economic opportunity, our local oil and gas industry provides revenue that is essential to keeping our schools operating and funded. Thank you for listening, your participation, and please, as you make policy decisions, remember the impacts that your decisions have on local children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Scrivener and members of the board. My name is Richard Chapman, the President and CEO of the Kern Economic Development Corporation, and we represent a coalition of business, government, and education with a mission to cultivate and promote Kern County's boundless opportunities for business. I brought with me a fact sheet off the press, so if I could pass these. And in the immortal words of Sergeant Joe Friday, just the facts. So I may have paraphrased him, but we are basically in one page laying out the economic impact of the industry. And I will mention next week we will be releasing the energy independence flyer about local production versus importing. And currently we import about 75% of our oil. Demand has not increased yet. Our reliance on overseas oil has. And many points were made today, so I won't be redundant, but one of the main things we talk about are wages, and wages in oil and gas are about 50% higher than the average for all industries in Kern County. We've heard about taxpayers, that base of over $200 million. And as an economic developer, really the multipliers, right? Not just the direct jobs on site, but induced and indirect. People using their wages to buy food, restaurants, as well as the suppliers that support the industry. We are an energy island. We're relying on oil, not just from around the world, including Russia and the like. So we really support your vision to create a sustainable economy, and we ask that you approve the updated mitigated measures as well as the amendments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who'll be next, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Michael Turnipseed, I represent the Kern County Taxpayers Association. To be short and sweet, Kern Tax supports the staff report and urges you to receive and file. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Okay, I'm seeing no other speakers.
I'll go. Sorry. My name is Riddhi Patel. I was born and raised in Kern County, and I'm in strong opposition to the proposed amendments. During the 2021 vote to approve this ordinance, there was about 11 hours worth of public comment, majority in opposition. Many of those same community members rightfully don't want to come out for this, knowing that the county didn't listen the first time. Also, if Leticia does vote against the proposed amendments today, she did originally vote in line with Republicans for this ordinance, and she probably will only not vote for it today because she's running for state office. Now, while I could go into the numerous environmental justice issues this ordinance has, like furthering local pollution and exacerbating the climate emergency, I'm going to focus on economic and labor statistics that this apparently worker-friendly county loves to ignore. Following the COVID-19 pandemic between 2019 and 2020, mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction GDP for the county declined by 17%. Jobs decreased in 8 Kern industry sectors between 2009 and 2019, oil and gas being one of them, by 21%. Furthermore, the county continuing to rely on one industry, specifically oil and gas, which is a volatile boom and bust industry, is not helpful to the tax base that numerous of our public services like education depend on, including an elementary school that shut down last year. ExxonMobil and Chevron cut more than 10% of their employee headcounts between 2019 and 2021. 4 out of 10 Kern workers lived below a living wage in 2019, third worst in the state. Nearly 1 in 2 workers in Southeast Bakersfield live below a living wage. Kern workers' earnings have declined and have been singularly worst among all California counties. Compared to 1979, a median wage of $34,451, workers in 2019 made a median wage of $30,000, worse than 1979. The county should be focusing on things that actually protect rank and file workers during a transitional phase, like worker displacement funds, access to health care, well remediation, and more. This isn't actually protecting rank and file, and even if you do pass it today, you still can't issue permits under the ordinance due to the court ruling.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Okay, seeing no other speakers, I'll return to the board. Board members, I think first I'm going to ask Lorelei Oviatt, our Director of Planning and Natural Resources, to respond to any of the comments that you heard or provide any additional information, and then I'll go to the board members for questions, comments, and a potential motion. Ms. Oviatt.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener. Ms. Patel is correct. As a reminder, there would be no permitting that starts from this action today. However, there were numerous comments in the comments that have been submitted that take exception to our statement of overriding consideration, which is 15093, stating that there are economic benefits. I would like to ask that you allow the CAO, Ryan Alsop, to talk about the direct relationship between our budget, which I believe is coming before your board on the 30th, and the lack of activity in oil and gas.
Mr. Alsop?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'll be quick. We've had these discussions on numerous occasions. No other county in the state is tied to oil and gas the way Kern County is. Our county's tax base is squarely connected, strongly connected to our oil and gas industry. As changes in that industry go, so too go changes to our tax base. I'm talking about property tax revenue and sales tax revenue, both of which, the bulk of which, in each scenario, come from oil and gas. Price fluctuations over the years, over the last 7 years since 2014, along with state policies that are related to permitting, the state policies related to well stimulation, and the governor's quest to drive the industry into extinction by 2045 have resulted in a loss of about almost $400 million to this county in discretionary revenue since 2014. Now that's $400 million in discretionary revenue that your board would have available over the last 7 years to invest in communities that need it. Public safety services and other vital services that you have not had, that has not been there, and it's specific, that number, just to the oil and gas industry. We were here not too long ago, a few weeks ago, talking to your board about our finances and our budget. In that report, we talked about assessed valuation, total assessed valuation, which is really forms the basis for property tax collection, revenue collection in the county in any given year. And we talked about how out of the 58 counties in the state, we have the lowest growth in assessed valuation since 2014, by far. It's been about 3.9%. Second lowest is a full 10% above us. Most counties are in the 45 to 50 to 60% range in growth. We're 3.9. That is specifically due to the decrease in the valuation of oil and gas properties in this county, which are predominantly in county unincorporated areas and collected in county unincorporated areas. Oil and gas valuation is down 64%, as we highlighted in that report several weeks ago, since 2014. So it's pulling down our overall growth when home prices were going up and other tax rolls were going up. It's all being pulled down, and the net of that is about 3.9%. The bulk of our sales tax collections come from the oil and gas industry. It's the business-to-business transactions, specifically in that industry, that provide the bulk of this county's sales tax revenue that we use to fund services in unincorporated areas of the county, including public safety services and other vital investment. Lorelei, do you need more on that? Okay.
Thank you. Chairman Scrivener, if I may address the issue that was raised about the 1-to-1 ratio.
Please.
I believe that they are misunderstanding how the mitigation works. If, as they say, I'll use round numbers again, that they are impacting 1 acre, and they are saying that they are then going to return, they're only going to leave 1/3 of it impacted by oil, and they're going to release the rest of it, return to use, back to the farmer, release their lease, the farmer could plant it, then they're only mitigating 1/3 of an acre 1-to-1. They're not mitigating the entire 1 acre. This isn't about the impacts to the land. This is about the impacts of loss of farmland use. So in that example, they have 1 acre, they do something on 1 acre, explore it. They're definitely going to pay mitigation for air. They're going to pay mitigation and all the other things for their impacts. That's understood. Then they say, I'm only going to leave 1/3 of it unavailable to be farmed, and I'm going to return the rest of it. When they submit their package, the 1-to-1 ratio is based on the 1/3 of an acre, not the entire acre. Now, that is an unusual example, however. And what the primary work that they do is exploratory, which takes up more land. In most of the examples that we've talked to oil companies, that is not their their standard, and they have indicated to us that they have access to properties and legacy equipment. But in that case, if they return it to the farmer and the farmer can use it and they provide us evidence they returned it, not just a handshake, but that you've released your oil lease on that portion of it and they can plant it, then there would be no loss of farmland for that example. I am prepared to read a revised recommendation when your board is when your board is ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oviatt. Board members, do you have any questions or comments, or shall we allow Ms. Oviatt to read her revised recommendation? Okay, Ms. Oviatt, please proceed.
So the department recommendation, which is contained in the addendum, is to adopt amended Section 15091, revised and restated findings of fact, and Section 15093, restated statement of overriding considerations, adopt amended, revised mitigation measure 4.2-1, agricultural resources, is recommended by staff and read into the record. Delete mitigation measure 4.17-5, utilities and service systems. Adopt amended, revised mitigation measure and monitoring program. Approve the amended emissions reduction agreement with the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District and authorize the chairman to sign. Approve the voluntary disadvantaged community drinking water grant fund pilot program. Adopt resolutions and recommended findings.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our members of the public that attended today and provided testimony. Thank you to Ms. Oviatt and her staff and Mr. Alsop for your comments. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda this afternoon. And so at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, August 30th at 9 a.m. for our budget hearings.
So moved.
We are adjourned.